hospitality was shown to me. Good job.
Thank you, Councillor Funk, and we know that as the summer games comes around, that hospitality is going to be shown to so many people, so thank you for those stories. All right, we have the agenda in front of us. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Fair. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have the minutes of July 19th, the regular council meeting on page 1. You've all had a chance to review those already. Goes to page 5. Can I have a motion, please? Motion to approve. Councillor Swagstra, second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. There's no business arising from the minutes. We will now move on to the, with your permission, I'll move to 9A, the accounts payable in the back of the book. Can I have a motion for accounts payable? Thank you, Councillor Funk. Seconded by Councillor Fair. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have the financial statements ending June. You've had a chance to review. I have a motion to approve, please. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Funk. Any discussion? Call for the question. Carried. We are now at 7:35. We'll move to the Conditional Use CU-2016-04. This is number 4, Loewen Boulevard. This is on page 6 for council members. I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing on this. Mr. Workentine, I'll ask you to introduce this, please.
Mr. Mayor, this is conditional use file CU-2016-04 for property with civic address of 4 Loewen Boulevard. The owner and the applicant for the conditional use is Shinkle Properties, Inc. Notices as, purpose of the conditional use is to allow a third-party advertising sign on an existing electronic message board sign in the C2 commercial community zone. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. Based on the existing signage, that there is a current electronic message board sign that's currently permitted as an accessory sign. However, this application, as required under the zoning bylaw, requires a conditional use to change its use to third-party advertising purposes. The recommendation is that, subject to any new information being made available at the public hearing and prior to the execution of a development agreement, that City Council approve the conditional use application.
Thank you. I don't see the applicant here today. Is there anyone wishing to object or have any questions to this file? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to object? Have any questions? And I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra.
I'll make the motion that we approve.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fair. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a fairly straightforward application. It deals with an existing electronic sign, and the request is to allow for third-party advertising to take place on it. Currently, only advertising that's related to that particular business is permitted. The conditional use is needed in order to allow other advertising there. I don't see any problem with that. We have other third-party advertising on electronic signs in Steinbach. I think it's good to give more opportunities to businesses to be able to advertise themselves. And so it's a sign that's already there, so I see no problem with having a more diverse range of advertising on it.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Fair?
No, I think it's covered.
Anything further from Council? Councillor Penner.
I just want to add that it will be subject to a development agreement, and that will address things such as the brightness of it and the types of images and et cetera. So it will be regulated as well.
Thank you. Anything further? Anything in closing? All right, Council, this is an existing sign that as there's an evolution in where the business is located, they still want to use this sign for other purposes. And it seems that this makes sense to us, and it looks like something we should be supporting. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. All right, we'll now move to reports and recommendations of the City Manager. 8A, this is Subdivision 4451 2016-7705. This is in regards to 275 3rd Street and 4 Fernwood Bay. This is on page 15 for council. Mr. Warkentine, you have a recommendation there.
Yes, the information that has been provided to council is quite lengthy. It seems, unfortunately, that there is a number of seemingly duplicate copies of sketches, etc. However, this is an application for subdivision. However, based on the reports that have been provided by administration, there are some concerns with it, most notably with respect to the overall drainage pattern considerations, and secondly, the potential impact on future servicing for lots in the neighborhood. At this point, administration is referring it to council for a decision. Recommendation from administration is that council deny the application.
All right. Thank you. This isn't a public hearing, but we do know that we have the applicants here in the room. Council, you've had a chance. There's also the added information that we have here from July 29th that's been given to us in regards to more information from the applicants themselves. Council, you have the recommendation in front of you. How would you like to proceed?
Question for administration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question to administration, one of the options that is mentioned here is that if this were to be approved, that it would be highly recommended to put in a requirement, a lot grading plan for Fernwood Bay along with 275 3rd Street. My question is, if that requirement was put in and addressing terms of future drainage concerns, would that be legally binding? Would that, so that a number of years down the road, would the city be able to point to that if there were future drainage problems and require that the land has to fit the lot grading requirements if we make that a condition of approval?
Yes, typically with subdivisions, although on a much larger scale and often with respect to multiple lot subdivisions, a lot grading and site servicing plan is normally required to be considered and approved prior to a subdivision being considered by the city. Those have long-term obligations that are attached. This situation would be no different. There would be an obligation for landowners to comply with that lot grading plan. That is a condition of approval.
Just a follow-up?
Go ahead.
And so just to clarify that, would this condition, this requirement remain in force even if the ownership of one or both of the properties changed in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Other questions for administration before we proceed? Councillor Fair.
I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, also to Administrator. Is there any other rights-of-way considerations that we need to consider in an application like this?
That is a difficult one, as all of these lots that the subject property as well as all the surrounding properties are all privately owned. While the city may impose conditions upon the subject property, it is not able to impose those conditions on properties that are not part of the subdivision application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Penner, you have a question for administration?
Yes, I do. Through you to administration. It also is noted here that this proposal will affect the potential of utility servicing in the future. What kinds of utility servicing would be affected by this proposal?
The potential that administration is aware of that is most likely would be Manitoba Hydro. Commonly, there is hydro easements that are required along common rear lot lines for properties that are in neighboring subdivisions. While it's not known for certain, it is only an anticipation of what could likely happen in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions for administration? Mr. Warkentine, when it comes to the easement, the potential of putting an easement there for a drainage plan, drainage lot grading plan, would the requirement be for a lot grading plan to encompass the area and not just these two lots?
I'll refer council to the report from the city engineer, and the recommendation or the alternative that is being suggested, that if council is considering the approval of the proposed subdivision, that a professional lot grading plan be prepared for all 6 lots which surround the subject property, only because of the impact that there may be on drainage patterns for the area in general.
So if that would be the case, would there actually be a possibility of requirements to work being done on other than these 2 lots?
That could very well be the case. And traditionally, where there are lot grading or drainage patterns that affect multiple private properties in an area such as this, it is actually fairly uncommon that it's formal easements that are entered into. Often the onus is up to the neighbors to work together to develop a plan that will be workable for the neighborhood.
All right. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner.
I would make a motion to deny the application.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fair, go ahead.
Thank you. Although I understand the applicant's desire to have the adjacent lot available to them, in this case, it appears that there's just too many concerns that will affect all of the neighbors around them. I think particularly the 6 lots that will be affected by the drainage and lot grading plan, that could incur costs for neighbors that they are not willing or not able to fulfill, as well as the potential of utility servicing in the future. That again could bring extra costs, either to the utility services that would again be reflected to the people that live there, or it would be onerous for any future development of that area. So I just think in the best interests of good planning, it's not a good idea to do this.
Thank you. Councillor Fair.
I think Councillor Penner covered pretty much my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Councillor Swagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will speak against the motion. I think that what we have here is a situation where you have 2 neighbors that wish to make a change in regards to property, and so you have 2 owners that are, both willing to transfer a portion of property from one to the other. And yes, it does create, it makes that section uneven. But if you look at the map and you look at other sections of Steinbach, this wouldn't be the only case where you have one property that goes in deeper than other properties. Yes, it's not ideal, it's not what's best in a perfect world, but it does happen. And sometimes that's just simply how these layouts happen. Now, I do agree, that we have to make sure that we address issues such as drainage. But as has been stated, if we put in a lot grading plan, and if we make that mandatory, that is legally binding, not just for these owners, but for future owners. And so the primary concern that I've heard is that of drainage. And I look at this property, and the only thing that's going to change is the property line will move. If we require that along the section where the border used to be, that the drainage remains the same pattern, presumably the drainage shouldn't change for the neighborhood. If we put that requirement in place, the drainage shouldn't change just because the property line does. So yes, it's likely that they'll want to do stuff with the new property that they would have, but if we just simply say that the drainage pattern has to remain the same, and so for that section there where the property line used to be, make sure it remains the same height, the same level, and the water can still flow through to make that requirement, I think we've just addressed the drainage concern. Now, as far as the utility concern, I have to believe that there's a way to put in a requirement, again, an easement, that along that section where the property line used to be, as a condition of the approval, you still have to allow access for MTS and whatever other utilities in there. So, again, what we're talking about here is moving a property line. And this is not a case of where the city is coming in after something's happened and trying to, because I know that we have issues in other neighborhoods where it's tough for the city to deal with drainage problems because we're dealing with private property. But in this case here, we have a circumstance where property owners are making an application to do a subdivision. We can put whatever conditions we want on that application in order to make sure that the neighborhood is not negatively impacted. And so if in these conditions we say the drainage has to remain the same in this section where the property line used to be, and you have to have the same utility access as where the property line used to be, and make that a condition, I think we've just addressed those concerns, and we allow the transaction to happen, and one neighbor gets a smaller backyard as they would prefer, and the other neighbor gets a larger backyard. So I'll vote against the motion. I think that this is something that we could approve.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion? Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I thought that we had covered it all, but I think that to enforce this on, if we really believe our city engineer's report that the 6 lots affected by the subdivision has to be taken care of as well, I think it'd be pretty hard for us to go and approve it. It's hard to enforce something on our neighbors in order to bring it into alignment. So I think on a new development, if you have odd-shaped lots, you can do that in a development agreement. It's a little bit more difficult to do this in existing lots where you have to start changing the drainage. So I'll stay with the motion.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Warkentine, when it comes to the 6 lots, what it's referring to are the 2 lots on either side of the 2 existing lots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when it says that there needs to be a lot grading and site surveying plan for those, it may require work to be done on those, but it also may not require. We just don't know. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Further discussion? Further discussion? Sorry, Councillor Penner, I do see you're on the edge of discussing, but not quite. Okay. Anything in closing?
Just in closing, I think the best thing in the long term would be to follow the recommendations of the city engineer and make sure that future owners don't run into any issues with either drainage or servicing.
Thank you. Council, this isn't an easy decision for us to make because it's not absolutely clear what we're going to end up with in the end. But we do know one thing, and that we will end up with the possibility of uneven lot lines. But we will end up with a possibility of actually having a drainage plan for the area, unlike what we presently have. And so, in a way, there's a benefit to moving forward with this, as there will actually be a drainage plan. As you can see with some of the pictures there aren't, there probably isn't a drainage plan at this time. It just is what it is. And so I'm comfortable moving forward and approving a subdivision like this, so I'll vote against the motion. Call for the question. All those in favor of denying? Opposed? It is. This is one of those tough ones. Where is Councillor Siemens when you need him? It is a tie, so that means that is defeated.
Suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to make a motion to approve right now because I think I know what's going to happen, and that would create a problem. All we've done is we've had a tie on it being defeated. So I make a recommendation, and whether there's a motion or not, that we table this to the next meeting, or we to have a vote again the other way. We know what's going to happen.
Well, we can never predict how we're going to vote, but I can assume.
If we have a motion, if we have a vote and to approve and it gets denied, then we've got the problem of how do we reopen it if we want to reopen it.
Thank you. Are you moving to table?
I'm moving to table it to the next meeting, yes.
Thank you.
That's a motion.
Seconded by Councillor Penner?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor of tabling? Good. Thank you. I'm sorry you don't have a solution today, but you had your entertainment at least. Thank you, Council. All right, we have any questions of council? Seeing none, we will move to correspondence and petitions. 11A from the Minister of Indigenous and Municipal Relations in regards to our Community Places grant for the BMX track. That's good news. Page 46. Mr. Workington, can you just update us on the timeline for that and how that's going to transpire?
The latest report that I had is that work will begin on that track after the summer games is over, so in the latter half of August and into September.
Okay, it's about a month's worth of work.
Plus or minus, yes.
Good. 11B, we have from a community in regards to the Community Places grant for the soccer park building on page 47. We know that that has completed now, and that is welcome news from the government to be supplying $35,000. Any questions? Take it as information. 11C, Community Places in regards to the Poplar Park playground on page 48. Take that as information. And we have, in regards to the ongoing municipal programs grant that we get from the provincial government, we'll take that as information as well, unless there's any questions. Seeing none, then we will move to other business, dog park scenario. Right now, Council, a few weeks ago, we did have a discussion in regards to license fees and so on, and we talked about the possibility of using some of those dollars for capital works that involve pets. And of course, something that we've talked about in passing and has been bantered about over the times previous years has been the talk of a possibility of a dog park or something like that. I think it's time that we have just a little bit of a discussion on what we'd like to see, whether we want to have more information, so that as we move forward with the discussion in regards to the fees, that we have that context in play. So Council, how would you like to proceed? Any questions? Councillor Penn.
Well, this is something I've been mentioned to me numerous times over the past, I guess, 6.5 years. So yeah, we've been campaigning and also throughout our time sitting on council. And I guess for myself, I would like to see us move ahead in this direction. I would like to see some potential locations where a dog park would fit within our community, where it's accessible, but yet not disruptive to maybe residents or in terms of safety with pedestrians, that kind of thing. So that would be my preference, and also ballpark cost as well, of course.
Thank you. Would you like to make that a motion?
I'd like to make that a motion. Location and cost.
As stated, thank you. Second by Councillor Funk. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just already gave my comments there, but the dog park is something, I guess, for any of us who've door knocked, we realize how many people in this community own dogs. There's a significant number of dog owners, and dog owners obviously want a place to be able to exercise their dogs, enjoy the outdoors, connect with other owners. So I think a dog park makes sense. It actually would provide a safe place for dogs to be able to roam and exercise. Provides also an area of community for the owners to be able to gather as well. So I think it only makes sense that we at least look at this. It's something that our residents want, and the timing is good, particularly because we're looking at licensing now. So if we could look at some locations, also some options in terms of cost, that is something I would like to see.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Funk, and then Councillor Penner.
Yes, thank you. I think a dog park would be something that'd be well used. There's a lot of dogs in Steinbach, and there's something to be said for letting your dogs run without a leash, let them tear, to get their energy out, and it's very healthy and good for the dog and for the owner. What I'd like to see is exactly numbers, what it would cost. I'd also want to keep the fees, the licensing fees, affordable. And if the fees cannot pay for the park, maybe down the road it could pay for ongoing maintenance of the park. And that way we wouldn't have to take that out of capital or the budget, the operating budget. We just have a one-time fee of starting it. And then after that, the maintenance could maybe come out of the fees. I'm not sure how we could work that, but we definitely need more information so we know which road to go down.
Councillor Penner.
Yes, thank you. Well, we're growing and our density is increasing. More and more people are living in condos or apartments. And, you know, the old model of everyone having a large yard is changing. So I think we need to consider a dog park as a new step to the future in Steinbach. We have, and many people, as Councillor Penner mentioned, have dogs and want to exercise them. And we want them to coexist well with the humans in the area as well. So with as minimal disruption as we can. So if we do have a dog park, I would like to see it have some kind of a buffering with green space or something where it would not disturb people, you know, in their own backyards and in their interactions outside, but also be a great place for people to come exercise their dogs and have that form of relationship and community. As far as the fees go, our present fees collected are very minimal, less than $1,000 a year. So that would be very little to go towards operating costs of a dog park. But if council reviews the fees, we may decide that this is a worthwhile thing to ask people that do have dogs to help pay for the costs of the dog park. And I think they will probably consider that very fair service. As well, the original purpose of licensing a dog in the city was to identify the dog. Nowadays, there's many ways of identifying a dog, much more sophisticated, such as computer chips and the like. So the old reasons for dog licensing no longer apply, but this could be a very nice way to have a user pay kind of service dog park. So I concur with the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Spikestra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will vote for the motion. I think it makes sense to get the information. I too would like to know what some of the options are in terms of cost. I will say that I think it's important that we keep perspective here in terms of that making sure that at least a portion of the cost would have to be covered by these fees. I don't want it all to come out of general revenues. I think it's also important that we that when we look at location options, we're not taking away from any of the human parks we have now. We're not reducing any of those in order to have this and, you know, having it at a different location. So I think we need to make sure that we recognize, you know, in terms of the priorities that, you know, we have existing parks we have to make sure we maintain and such. With that being said, getting information is a good thing. It makes sense to find out what some of the costs are and what some of the fee structure options are in regards to how such a thing would be paid for. I also would say that if we did do a dog park and it was anywhere near a neighborhood, I think there should be an opportunity for the public, particularly in that area, to be able to have input as to whether they would want it near their neighborhood. I think that's these are all things that we need to factor in, but certainly the motion says we get more information about some of our options, and I think that's appropriate.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I really, I guess I don't have a dog, and I really, whatever, it doesn't really matter to me. The only thing is, some of the things comments that I've heard resonate with me. When I sit outside on my deck and I sit there and have a quiet time, I don't like to hear dogs barking. So, and I know that's probably going to be something, but I know that it's also going to be something that we're going to consider as we look for a property that's going to be suitable. And I hope it's going to be something that is going to be away from people that don't like dogs, you know, and so that they're not bothersome to those that don't like them.
Thank you. Anything further? Anything in closing? No. Council, I think we've heard some very good points here. We need to be clear on information when it comes to location. Location is going to be very important so that it's well planned out and that it is a positive thing, not a negative thing. Also, funding needs to be looked at carefully. A few different models where it's possible user pay or partial user pay. I think that's also a good way to go about. And so I look forward to getting information from administration, and it will help us guide us. It will help guide us when we do want to make the decisions about the licensing fee structure. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Funk. All those in favor?